All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for taking time from your demanding Tuesday to join us for today's webinar, Preparing for CMMC, What You Need to Know Now. I'm Kevin Cutter. I'm a Cybersecurity and Compliance Advisor for Tevora. I'm joined by Jeremiah Sahlberg, Managing Director of Tevora's Federal and Enterprise Risk Management Practices. Before we get started, please know that we encourage any questions that you may have on the topics of CMMC and DFARS throughout the session. Please write us in the chat box and we'll do our best to address everything. If we do not get to your questions, we will follow up with an answer after the session. And with that said, I'll turn you over to Jeremiah so we can get started.
Kevin, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Thank you very much, as Kevin had mentioned, for taking time out of your very busy Tuesdays to spend a few minutes with us. I think this will probably be about 30 minutes long. So, but as Kevin mentioned, please ask your questions. We've been hearing about CMMC for it seems like a very long time now. And it's one of these rollouts that has certainly taken a lot longer than I think everyone anticipated. Certainly the pandemic didn't help. So, they've been making progress with the programs, and I'm going to use today's time to go ahead and go through a couple updates, some things that have happened since the last time I had a chance to speak to our clients and future clients. And so we'll go ahead and just jump into things right now. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to give you the 30-second commercial about Tevora. Just so for those that don't know who we are, I can give you a little background on what we do and where we're coming from, but really just jump into some of those new clauses that came in DFARS and any updates that we can share around CMMC, some timelines. And then lastly, we're going to hang out for a couple questions. So get those queued up, get them over to Kevin, and he'll be sure to pepper me with those questions at the end of the session today. So for those I haven't had a chance to meet, and I apologize, my webcam having some webcam issues. So there's a less than fortunate picture of me up in the upper left-hand corner. I am a managing director for federal and enterprise risk practice areas. I've got a bunch of certifications you've seen down there. I actually started my career back with the Department of Defense within DISA. So that was back in the mid-90s. So it's interesting to be full circle in my career after spending time in the private sector. Doing various things from penetration testing to risk management activities, compliance activities, and so forth. There's some other events and activities that I've got listed on there, but I don't want to bore you with my bio. I'm just a guy that's got much more gray hair than that picture shows, and I've been doing this for a bit, but so I'm going to share some of the things that I know today, but there's always good information out there from others. So we'll go ahead and keep moving forward here. A little bit about Tevora. So a little bit more important to this team. Tevora has been around for 18, going on 18 years. We've specialized in a variety of things from compliance activities, whether or not it's PCI or HIPAA, high trust, SOC, ISO services. I do run the enterprise risk management, so whether or not it's everything from building out programs, conducting those risk assessments, to maybe doing M&A type of activity, helping get the metrics out of your programs to present to the board. We do have a very strong practice around our GDPR as well as CCPA. We are headquartered in California, so we certainly speak that. We've got a brand new privacy tracker tool that's on our website. So anyone here who has any privacy questions, I do recommend going over there. There's a really neat comparison tool you can click on and get some latest details around the latest data privacy regulations that are out there. We put solutions out there. We've got a great solutions team led up by Ben Dimmick. Our threat team is fantastic for us. Threat is doing those penetration testing type activities. And beyond just being an organization that does pen testing, we are actually a research and development type organization as well, which gives us a unique advantage. If you're actually to go back and Google Wired Magazine and Tevora, you'll find out that we're actually on the cover. Truman, one of our consultants there, actually he modified a Tesla and turned into a surveillance scout vehicle. The FBI took that and using it part of their training program. So some really neat stuff. Definitely take a look there. Incident response, we are PFI, PCI forensics investigator. We got PCI in our DNA. And we help a lot of organizations with our incident response capability. So lots of good stuff there if you're in need of anything from tabletop exercises, retainers, and just good old-fashioned incident response incident response support. Matt Mosley runs that. He also runs our Tevora Talks podcast, so I definitely recommend taking a peek there. We got about 140 employees. That's a bump up from last time we had a presentation here. I'm actually presenting today out of our Fairfax, Virginia office. So despite being in the pandemic, we are kind of starting to get back to normal, which is really exciting. We've got actually 5 or 6 folks in the office here today. But you got a bunch of logos down there in the below. That's a little bit more about all of our certifications from our internal ISO 27001, our high trust assessors, PCI assessors. One that we're going to talk about a little bit more later is our ISO 17020. That ties into what we're doing for this space. And other accolades. Moving forward, I'm not going to less than 10 seconds on the slide, just letting you know that, hey, all those things I talked about, here's an explanation in a little bit more detail. So if any of this perks your interest, be sure to reach out to your account manager, or I'm sure Kevin will help you out after this call today. So with that, what are we really here to talk about? We're here to talk about DFARS. We're going to do a little bit of a history, get back a little bit to what was some of the new clauses that they've added inside of DFARS, and then really step into what does that mean for and where are we at with CMMC today. So just to get us aligned on some terminology here, what is the scope of DFARS? We're talking about this. It's really around QE, controlled unclassified information. You'll see it referenced in a bunch of the regs as CTI, controlled technical information, covered defense information. At the end of the day, if you hear the word QE or CUI, that means that's the data that we care about. That's the data that the Department of Defense cares about. That's the stuff that needs to be properly protected as it traverses into, throughout, and out of your organization, maybe sharing it with sub-suppliers and so forth. And so these are the things that you need to make sure that if you see this stuff, these are the terms, DFARS, if you haven't heard that term before, I mean, most of us probably have. Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplements. It's basically the extra requirements that go with it, and that's what spells out all of the security details. All right, so I think I covered some of the vocabulary here to kind of get us started. Controlled unclassified information, what is it? So the National Archives is actually the organization that defines that. And they have a list here, as you can see. When you're dealing with different types of information, whether or not it's design specifications, or whether or not it's particular materials that are being used, or it's critical infrastructure stuff. So any of this can fall into the classification of controlled unclassified information, which is really the scope of what's in play. So be sure to take a chance to go and look at the archives, and it's interesting to see the type of information from blueprints to order specifications, all that sort of stuff that is in scope for these DFARS clauses. So this is old news. I even put up there old news. So at the end, this DFARS clause 7012, which everyone refers to as clause 7012 within DFARS. Contractors, those subcontractors, those that are providing services to the DoD, have to do 5 key things. The first one is to provide adequate security. You have to protect that covered defense information or CUI information that's within the organization. If there happens to be a cybersecurity event, that has to be reported on. So you have to report those cybersecurity incidents that affect that covered defense information or have some sort of operational impact to the organization. That needs to be properly reported to the Cyber Crimes Center for the DoD. So you have to also submit the malicious software. If you're discovering malicious software within your organization, that has to be also submitted to the DoD Cyber Crimes Center. So if you're seeing something that's new, or even if it's not new, but it's something that's happened, they need to know about it. If there is an incident, you have to preserve the environment. It's a crime scene, if you would. So you have to make sure you've got your logs and all the particular details. And the good follow-up clause is anything that is passed to you must be passed down to any of your subcontractors that are involved with that covered defense information or operations thereof. So, nothing new here, but just a little primer to get us up to speed on, the 7012 clause. So, what was adequate security? They just said, hey, adequate security is NIST 800-171. So, and this was something that went into effect and was required as of October 1st, 2017. So it's interesting, we're talking to these clients, they're like, oh yeah, we're kind of trying to figure out the CMMC stuff. It's really very similar to what was already included in the NIST 800-171. And so, oh, well, haven't you been doing this? So like, no, not necessarily. This has been a requirement. It's been inside of the DFARS literature, and it's now something that's people are being, held to actually, oh, I actually have to do what was said in those contracts. So there's the NIST 800-171 Rev 2 is the current version that's out there. It tells you all of the requirements. There's also a supplemental assessor's guide that tells how us assessors do assessments against that. So it's a really good cheat sheet for just trying to make sure that as you have and are preparing for assessments, what assessors like us will be looking for. It has a baseline of requirements, and there's 3 things it really focuses on. One is policies, making sure you've got written documents and processes and procedures in place, and then having the right kind of IT configurations that support those policies and procedures. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump into, it's got 14 control families, 110 controls. If you've been following this at all, this is all, old news stuff. So we want to say that, the environment, the DoD said, you know what, we're still getting breached, our supply chain is still getting compromised. The idea of this self-attestation didn't properly work. So what they said, hey, let's put out CMMC. That's where we've got the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. When you have a certification, you're having an outside entity come in and perform an assessment, so it's no longer that self-assessment. It's now being a validated assessment from someone who knows how to properly test for each of those controls. So it builds on, so what is CMMC? It builds on those existing DFARS requirements. And the DoD has been migrating over to this. And one of the big takeaways here is that it's going to apply to the entire defense industrial base, and that it's going to require certified independent, this is very important, independent third-party organizations to conduct these assessments, which is really interesting. So for all of our clients that we've been helping do remediation stuff, that may actually put us in an interesting position, because do we have independence anymore to help them actually do the certified assessments? We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But they have a tier, they realize, they understand that not all suppliers within the DoD defense industrial base are providing the same level and types of services to the government. And they said, okay, well, let's go ahead and create some levels. So they have level 1 being basic cyber hygiene required, where there's more advanced ones being level 5. So, and then they have the levels 2 through 4 in between there. So it's really, at the end of the day, CMMC is really put into play to validate and verify, to ensure that there's the appropriate type of cybersecurity in place to protect our defense operations. So pretty straightforward. I think we've all kind of heard this spiel so far. What's new here? So this is the new news, not the old news, but they've recently added in November, went into effect, a couple more clauses. Before we were talking about the 7012 clause. Now we're going to talk about 7019, 7020, 7021. So for 7019, what we're seeing and what they've put out there is that for a contract to be awarded, the applicant must have and have done their DoD assessment and put it into the SPRS system, SPRS, the Supplier Performance Risk System. And that's something that needs to sit in there, and it has to be no more than 3 years old for each subcontractor. So if this is something that you're not aware of, this is something that you should absolutely be marching towards, looking at there. And so it's now asking not only to have it, but to put that in the system. And there's a unique scoring requirement that goes with it. What they've done is they've said, okay, you've got a baseline score of 110 points. It's not one for one to the 110 controls that NIST 800-171 has, but has 110 points. And if you miss a certain control, you deduct either 5, 3, or 1 points from that score, and ultimately you end up with a score maybe a 99 or 100, 102. Theoretically, if you don't have anything in place, you can actually have a negative score, which I hope none of our, the folks on the phone have today. But so that's the 7019 clause. You have to have that, you have to put it in the SPRS, you have to have your assessment details around it. 7020 is that the contractor, subcontractor needs to provide access to the facilities so that these medium and high confidence assessments can be conducted, and the scores from those high, medium, or high confidence assessments will be posted in the SPRS system. We've worked with a number of clients in prep for their medium and high level assessments to get them ready for it. And so, we've found that that pre-assessment, getting them ready for the formal medium and high confidence assessments, gets them closer to that 110 score number that they're looking for. But you have to say, yep, as part of this, you have to allow the government to come take a peek, make sure you're doing everything that you were supposed to be doing within your infrastructure. And then lastly, the contractor shall have a current CMMC certificate at the CMMC level required. So basically, they're now starting this requirement, this flow down. So in the procurement process within government, they're going to say, okay, this contract's going to require a CMMC level 3 for this particular stuff, and that has to be maintained for the entire duration of that particular contract. So something to kind of be aware of. It's not something you just get there and you forget about it. It's something you have to, do the care and feeding. Like any good cybersecurity program, it's something that you have to keep up with and provide the right kind of maintenance and apply the right kind of resources to. Moving on here to our, so who does this apply to? It's pretty simple. The DoD is pushing this down as requirements for all the DoD prime contractors. So, and from there, they're going to pass it down to any subcontractors, and it needs to continue through that flow down chain. So anytime that there's the cover defense information or CUI information that's being shared, then certainly that needs to have all those clauses attached to it. No exceptions exist. Before we said that no other federal agencies are requiring CMMC, that's actually starting to change. We're actually starting to see other organizations really take a look at NIST 800-171, and while CMMC is specific to the DoD right now, the essence behind it with NIST 800-171 as a framework is being adopted in other places, which is quite interesting. So, so that was who. The what? What is this? So, unlike I think we talked before about this NIST 800-171, which had 14 domains. There's 17 domains here within CMMC. They added 3 additional domains. And it's broken into this concept of processes and then say capabilities and practices. So if you think of the processes, and it really starts whenever you're above level 2. So level 2 and above has these particular processes. And what these do are they're looking to say, okay, is my policy documented? Is it managed? Is it reviewed? Is it optimized? So it's that maturity level that you typically see with the CMMI that's been mapped back to CMMC. So there's very particular things at each of the, starting at level 2 and going up for each of the process areas. Regarding the capabilities, these are the specific, and the supporting practices, these are the specific technical controls that are going to apply to each of the control families. And it's kind of interesting when you actually look at the particular details within the CMMC model. All of the processes enhancements start at 999 and work their way down, where all the practice requirements start at 1 and work their way up. So you can kind of see, is it a process requirement or a practice requirement, just on which end of the scale between 100 and 999. So, all right. So kind of getting into it, how many controls are there at each level? Level 1, there's 17 controls, pretty straightforward. Level 2, we're talking about it's a documented environment. There's 72 controls. CMMC level 3, 130, which, and of that 130, 110 of those controls are derived directly from the NIST 800-171 requirements. So if you've already been doing what you were obligated to do back in 2017, 4 years ago, you'd be 85% of the way there. So this really shouldn't be a huge stretch for anyone that's already within this space, at least meeting the level 3 requirements. Level 4 and level 5, this is territory that hasn't been fully executed yet against CMMC, but they've defined the requirements. The requirements, go up, as you can see here on the screen. And it's one of these things where you can't get to level 2 until you've done all of the controls within level 1. Subsequently, can't do level 3 until you've done all the controls in level 2. So it's cumulative, and so just kind of think through that. If you don't have something in place at the lower control level, you have to address that first. So don't say, "Oh, we'll deal with that one later." There is no more exceptions to this process. You have to do it all for that target level that you're going after. So that's our little illustration on that. So as I mentioned before, the CMMC one. The CMMC includes all of the NIST 800-171, but does have those 3 new domains at the bottom there: asset management, recovery, and situational awareness. It does pick up elements from a lot of different places, including the DFARS requirements. We talked about the NIST 800-171. It also has some of the 800-171B enhanced security requirements, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Things from NIST 853. So if you got folks that are familiar with that, that's baked into some of the controls as well as some other regulations, the UK Security Essentials and Australian Essential 8. So it's what's interesting here is they really folded in the best of the best to make it applicable to the ecosystem and the suppliers that are supporting our DoD infrastructure. All right, so when the timelines, this is what's kind of interesting. So what happened recently? They actually put the whole program, it's got new administration within the White House, and they've started a congressional review of all of this program as a whole. And that's really expected, as you've got a program that is this big, this encompassing, that's touching so many suppliers and organizations. They want to make sure that the burden for getting services provided to the DoD is meeting the requirements for cybersecurity, but not holding back, but doing it in a way that still allows other organizations to participate. So there's a review that's currently going on right now around it. Their goal for fiscal year 2021 was really to get 15 prime organizations assess those prime acquisitions and get them at the mid-sized level 3, CMMC level 3. So that's what's going on this year. So they've done a provisional program. They've got some provisional assessors that are working the way through the training program, which hasn't yet been finalized. And so that's what they're doing this year. Next year, they're going to talk about that level 4 that we said that's not quite developed yet. They're going to roll the program out to level 4 starting next year, or next fiscal year, which starts in October. And then they'll also increase the quantity of those prime acquisitions that they're going after. And then in 2023, they'll roll it out to the level 5 requirements and really push this out to all programs at all levels. So I guess the big takeaway here is everyone here is hearing about it. Everyone's super excited to start this program, but it's got a 5-year rollout and it's going to take some time. And that's one of the big takeaways from, so there's these CMMC town hall meetings that happen, I think once a month, and not exactly once a month, but about once a month. And they're going through their challenges, and as they're going through this process, it is a rollout. If you'd asked me last year at the beginning of the year, I thought we'd be through this process as a C3PAO, a CMMC cyber assessor, by the end of last year, but it's taking a lot longer than anticipated. So a couple just things to be aware of. There's no exemptions from this. It's something that these additional requirements went into place on November 30th. All companies that are providing any work for it's going to have to meet this. So this is something that everyone needs to be focused on. And probably the big surprising thing to those that have done work within the other federal agencies, where you could have these POAMs or plans of actions and milestones, where you could say, oh, well, we don't have this control in place yet, but we're kind of working towards it. That's no longer going to be allowed. You have to, it's a certification against the baseline, and all the controls need to be addressed. So, and to be clear, it doesn't replace the existing DFARS 80171 requirements. It's getting clarification, expanding on that. I wanted to share this title slide, or this timeline slide that the CMMC AB actually shared during their last town hall. For us, we are a assessment organization. We want to be a C3PAO, CMMC, third-party assessment organization, and people keep knocking on our door. Hey, Jeremiah, can you come assess us yet? And I was like, no, not yet. We're getting there. So I just wanted to lay out here and share that they're beginning the provisional instructors. We talked about that was a lottery-based system. They're then getting the licensed partners with the content being developed in May and June this year. Then they're going to have the first classes offered by those licensed training partners, the LTPs, in June and July of this year. Then they're going to have beta versions of the certifications coming out in July or August with, and this is, unfortunately, and, it makes sense. They can't put a deadline. They're going to say fall of 2021, they'll have the whole training and certification program out and released. So, people are knocking on the door. Hey, Jeremiah, can we be an assessor? Maybe the fall this year. They have to come up with the training content. They have to go through the certification process of the assessors, and then we'll be able to go out there and conduct those assessments. So it's coming, it's still coming, but we're not quite there yet. So, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything. We should, be prepared. Let's start the process. These are things that you can do today to be prepared for this. So certainly look at your policies, standards, all the procedures, and make sure you've done that initial verification against the NIST 800-171 controls. One of the big things is you must have that system security plan. So if you don't have your SSP developed yet, if you don't know what an SSP is, that's something you need to get up to speed with really quickly. And then you're going to want to be able to get your system in, register with SPURS, and to do that, you have to go through the PIEE process to get approved, to get that access to SPURS. And SPURS really is that, what I mentioned before, that repository where you put your assessment scoring. If it's going to be a moderate or medium or high level confidence system, the government's going to come perform those assessments and put the scores within there. So you can access and look at and see your scores within the system. And it's really designed to be a place where all the supply chain can see the scores for the entities that are, getting their programs up, working towards getting 110 points on their systems, and so that they can understand, as we pick these sub-suppliers, are they secure sub-suppliers or not? There's a couple of common issues that we've come across with a number of clients. The first one here is, missing documentation. It wasn't fully addressing all the requirements. Maybe their training program didn't address insider threat, which is a specific call out, or some of the documentation is still in draft mode, and draft documentation doesn't help you because these are policies and procedures that have to be operational and in effect at the organization. So saying, hey, well, we've got a draft policy, that doesn't count. That won't get you there. I have to use the validated FIPS 140-2, which is going to be flipped over to 140-3 cryptography requirements. So kind of make sure that you're using those that have been vetted and approved, not just any old encryption will do. This is something that we see a lot, so certainly with the work from home models. The enabled split tunneling, for those that, without getting too technical here, if you're working from home, you can be connected to your home network and VPN and connected to your office network, and that allows you to offload traffic. So as you're going out to a website, you're not having to haul all that data back to the company. But by doing that, you're actually connected to two simultaneous networks at the same time, and it's actually a security issue. So definitely don't want to have that split tunneling enabled with your VPN settings. Usually it's just a little checkbox and you're got it good to go. Multi-factor authentication, and certainly for local access to privileged accounts, you got to get that MFA deployed within the organization. We're all working from different offices. I'm actually at the office today. You may have alternate work sites. Maybe your home is an alternate work site. How do you avoid bringing CUI data into your alternate work site if it's at home? Do you have the right kind of security measures at that alternate work site? So understand what those are, what your approved alternate work sites are, and then when you're bringing CUI data into those work sites, that you have those proper controls in place. And then lastly, the other one we see a lot of is not properly flowing down these requirements to other suppliers. So, hey, make sure that as you're sharing data, you're now the custodian of that information, that you've properly you're protecting it as you're bringing others into the fold. So how can we help? We're always here to help. So one of the things, just to kind of share, we are a FedRAMP 3PAO. So we're a third-party assessment organization. So if you're a cloud service provider and you want to sell your services to the federal government, you don't have to, but one avenue is to get yourself on the FedRAMP marketplace. And to do that, you need a 3PAO to come and do that inspection. So we actually have a certification. What's interesting, when we went through the certification process, we added something to our scope of accreditation. We specifically added the NIST 800-171 controls to it. So we go out and can do accredited assessments against NIST 800-171. And why is that important? Because that will allow folks that are going down this journey to do a assessment by a third party, which is accredited. We have that, and to help give that our clients the confidence as they're submitting their scores into SPURS that, oh, we've done it in conjunction with an entity that's trained and certified to do so. Likewise, now no one can claim they can do certified CMMC assessments. It's very clear because there's a whole certification process and they're still building that out, getting training out there and so forth, unless you're one of the provisional assessors. However, they've said you can do what's called a pre-CMMC. And so that's actually what we do. We go into organizations and help them with pre-CMMC level 3 assessments. We'll go out there and conduct reviews of their infrastructure against all the controls. Remember, CMMC level 3 is 85% of those controls is NIST 800-171. So that's something that we're very skilled, trained, and actually accredited to, at least on the NIST 800-171 side. So our reports, what they look like, we talk about the project scope, methodology, how we get the scoring details in there, but we also include an evidence mapping. So within the reports and the summaries, we'll say, okay, here's the control, and here's the evidence that maps back to that particular control. So when you're going through your medium or high confidence assessments, it becomes a cheat sheet. For any areas when we're doing our assessment, we identify a finding. We'll go back to the control objective. What is the objective of that control, as well as what are potential recommendations to remediate that that would be suitable for the environment. So those recommendations are opinions and not part of the actual certification process. And we do have a disclaimer for when we're doing our certified NIST 800-171 controls to indicate that. But yeah, this is something that we do and have had numerous clients that have reached out to us to help get them prepared in this space. The other thing we help is remediation follow-up support. So based upon the results of the assessment, we'll go out there and help them with their incident response plans. As I mentioned before, we're a PFI. We'll help write their policies and documentation, maybe implement their multi-factor solution, which is all great. We've got some, we're cybersecurity professionals and cybersecurity experts. So maybe we need to give them some guidance around, how to comply in certain areas. We've got expert staff. However, here's the kind of the interesting rub. If we help do remediation activities, then we will be excluded from doing your formal C3PAO assessment. So we're in process to become a C3PAO, and but we can't assess our own work. That's a violation within the FedRAMP space, and it's also going to be, it will lack, remember at the beginning of the session I talked about independence. So we're here to help. We'll have some conversations with you. If, you want us to be a partner helping with remediation. Otherwise, maybe we want to just keep our partnership at a level of doing assessment type activity. But we'll talk about that on a case-by-case basis. Hopefully there's a couple nuggets in here today that you found interesting, new in the space. And at this time, I'm going to actually, I think I'm 35 minutes, which was my goal here, to say any questions from anyone. Kevin, anyone chime in with any questions today?
Yeah, we actually had several, so I'll just kind of throw them at you for sake of time here. How do I know which CMMC level is applicable to my organization?
What CMMC level? Yeah, great question. That would be really, it should be defined in the contract. One of the training things that the CMMC AB is doing right now that they realized is that the procurement officers need to be trained on knowing which CMMC level they have to put into the contracts. So it should really be a flow down from the primes, and in those contracts as they get updated are going to start to have language in there. So it'd be certainly reach out to the primes. There's some guidance that's out there. It's being clarified within CMMC, but right now they're only rolling out level 3. For more advanced stuff that's going to be in operations, they'll be above. But I'd have that individual reach out to their prime contract or their contact and ask them to go back up the food chain and ask them what are the obligations and the anticipated obligations. Those are conversations that should be happening right now. Good question.
Yeah, so next one up, you mentioned the CMMC town hall meetings. Where do I find those?
Yes, okay, so there's the CMMC AB. If you go to the I think it's CMMCAB .org. If you Google that, it's kind of hidden on there. I think there's like an outreach. If you go to what's happening or recent videos on their website, they do them about once a month. They were doing them a little more frequently last year, and there was a big pause. I think there was one in February, March, or March and April. But check the CMMCAB.org website if I'm not mistaken. And Kevin, hold on to that one, and I'll send them a link afterwards with the actual URL, so I'm not leading people astray.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So then the next one I can handle, will these slides be available after the meeting? And the answer is yes. So your respective Tevora rep is going to be in contact to provide the deck as well as the recording from today's session. So you guys have it on file. You can share it with other members of your teams. And so then the next question up for you, Jeremiah, my company will be striving for a level 3, good cyber hygiene cert as a DoD subcontractor. What about my company suppliers? Do they too have to be level 3 certified?
Yes, maybe, no. So it's really going to be following the data. So is covered defense information going to be shared and pushed into their systems? We actually raised a question with the DoD Cybersecurity Center. When you have suppliers that may have access to management consoles, do they have access to affect the CDI information? So the answer is if you're sharing covered defense information with them directly, and there's specifications and blueprints and order specifications that are unique to the government, then the answer is yes. If there's and testing controls and whatever that they're doing. If it's a type of supplier that's providing you paper towels and coffee, which is very, very important to your staff, especially the coffee. I know we're all caffeine junkies here. Then the answer is no. It really depends on what that supplier is doing for you and the type of information that's being shared with them. So that's a good question. I can help give some individual guidance if you want to, put a little asterisk next to that, we can follow up. But you need to have a vendor management program in place and understand how those suppliers are going to be, are they sharing sensitive information? Are they connecting to your network? Can they interrupt your business operations? And do you have an operational capacity for the DoD? If you start answering yes to them, then the answer is probably yes. If it's more of the paper towels and coffee, then the answer is no. And in between, we'll have to have a discussion.
Great. Another good question. Can you compare CMMC Level 3 to SOC 2? It appears to me that CMMC Level 3 has a few more controls than SOC 2.
Yeah, they're a little bit different frameworks. We do have clients that are going after multiple frameworks together, and we put them on a unified compliance path. We have to kind of be careful because, as I said before, if we help do any remediation activities, then we are disqualified from doing those formal assessments. They're different. There are two different beasts. There's going to definitely be overlapping controls. Specifically within the SOC world, there's the SOC 2 Type 1 and SOC 2 Type 2. SOC 2 Type 1 is the design control. So it's the, have you designed your cybersecurity controls in place, where SOC 2 Type 2 becomes your, the operational effectiveness of those controls over a period of time. But again, it's going to be, they're different paths, so they're not interchangeable. There is some talk of honoring FedRAMP with CMMC, but it seems to be more rumor than fact at this point. So no, I would say no, that's not something that's equivalent. Good questions.
Yeah, and there's one more good one, and then we can probably transition. But in understanding that the C3PAO training is ongoing, when will I be able to select my C3PAO assessor?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if you saw on that slide there, so this fall they should have the program fully rolled out. It starts with, just to kind of recap on that, there's a training they have to provide the C3PAOs, us. We have to then take a test, pass that test. I actually have a meeting with them this CMMC next week to go through logistics of getting our certification. So I think we're in step 3B right now in the application process. So I'm going to say fall-ish with an asterisk and say, I don't know. I don't want to make any promises and not meet them. So later this year, hopefully. It's rolling out. It's rolling out slower than anticipated, but we're getting there. So
yeah, no, it's definitely a loaded question. I think most folks get that. And there's actually another one that just came across that I do want to share because I think it's beneficial to everyone on. If my company does not achieve certification, how quickly is our business pulled from the DoD after the certification failure?
So we need to get those. So if you look at the 7019 clauses, you need to start putting that stuff into SPURS. It'll be a contract, kind of the renewal process, and why it's being rolled out over 5 years, so that as that next contract renewal happens, they're going to say, are you on the list or not? And if you're not, then you kind of get ejected from the system. At least that's my understanding.
And then there was one more follow-up. We're getting popular. So what is the due time to get the assessment done?
You need it. Your self-assessment getting in SPURS is something that should be happening now. It should have happened November 30th. So if you're in that supply chain and you've got, you need to make that happen. And
excellent.
Kind of following up on that, if you're not confident that you have the skills to adequately assess your own infrastructure, this is something that we certainly do and can help you out. So, all right, with that, is that any more?
No, I think that does it. So I think some very good questions and some great answers. So thanks. Well, yeah, so with that in mind, guys, we appreciate you all joining. If you take a look at your screen here, Jeremiah just shared, Tevora does consistently put information out for everything on the bleeding edge of all of our dedicated cyber practices. If you take a look here, we have a few other webinars that are coming up, one applicable for high trust, introduction and keys to certification success, PCI, 3DS payments, building risk assessment models, incident response in the cloud, identity and access management, and hardware hacking. So if any of these are of interest, your respective reps, one of you asked a great question earlier, how do I get my hands on today's content? We will be reaching out with that material. So you can reply back to your respective Tevora rep to request this webinar detail. We can get the registration link into your hands so you can benefit from future Tevora webinars. So with that in mind, I just want to say on behalf of Tevora, on behalf of Jeremiah, thanks for taking time from your busy Tuesday to join us, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. Stay healthy out there. Be well. See ya. Bye.